a pleasure to have you to see Peter's story and Joanne Fox Phillips read tonight. It's really exciting to see up and coming authors, at Malvern Books. It's just awesome. I love to do it. And we're going to start with Joanne Fox Phillips tonight. She is the Chief Audit Executive of Sim Group Corporation, an oil and gas company headquartered in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and she came from Tulsa today to read here. So I think, at least one of you needs to go out and knock some people out and drag them in here, because she came all the way from Tulsa. Her first novel, Revenge of the Cube Dweller, which is over there on the table, was published in July of 2014 by River Grove Books in Austin, Texas. Joanne was born in San Francisco and grew up in Menlo Park, California. She currently resides in Tulsa, Oklahoma, with her husband Phil and her two rescue dogs, Rocky and Memphis. So Joanne is going to read to us a bit from Revenge of the Cube Dweller, which is really fun. I read.
But you read it.
I read big chunks of it and was just having such a good time. And I'm really surprised she still has a job. I was talking to her about that. So, all right, Joanne, please.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Well, thank you for coming. And my goal here is to poach all of Peter's readership here, since mine has already bought the book and is related to me. So show of hands, how many of you work for an oil and gas company? Okay. Have to find out who my audience is. So this story I wrote while being an employee of an oil and gas company. And it is kind of funny because I really did think that the executive team would have trouble with this book, because in the story, this is a middle-aged woman that works in an internal audit department, not unlike me, that ends up bringing them down through corporate sabotage and exploiting a lot of the weaknesses a lot of companies have. But they didn't see any of themselves in this at all, and so I still have a job. In fact, the CEO wrote an endorsement of my book. So, but I do work in my job. I am a fraud examiner, so I am called upon to investigate fraud, or when people suspect fraud. So it is sometimes interesting. It's usually very tedious, but that's fiction. You can make it really fun. So what I'm going to read to you today is just a little section where they're discussing a fraud. Tansy, the main character, has discovered a fraud at work, a pretty plain Jane fraud. It's an accounts payable fraud where someone set up a fake vendor and they're putting in false invoices and collecting money. And so she's having lunch in Houston with her old friends that are real, they're in the swank set, and now she's has an entry-level job after her really bad divorce. So they're having dinner, and she says, I think I've uncovered a fraud, I say, changing the topic. I gave them the particulars of the Maisie caper, including the sports car and the dowdy appearance. What are you going to do about it, Beth asks. Prosecute? Not sure. I tried to tell my boss, but I just haven't had a chance, I answer. Grant is an insurance executive and begins a tale he heard about from a colleague. Years ago, my buddy over at Marsh was asked to cover a claim on a fraud down in Brazil. One of the major oil companies, not sure which one, had a posh office down there. In the president's office hung a very expensive oil painting, a Mark Rothko, I think. During the collapse of oil prices in the mid-'80s, the office was closed, and when the painting was appraised for shipment back to the States, they discovered it was a forgery. Oh no, did they know who stole the real one? I asked with a smile. They thought, but could not prove, that sometime during her employment, the president's secretary had substituted the original with a copy, and no one had noticed. Can you imagine this woman who probably loved art working for this Jethro who would have preferred dogs playing poker or a velvet Elvis? Beth laughs. You have no idea what it is like to work for people like that, I chime in. I'd probably do the same thing if I was clever enough to think of it. The best crimes are the ones where no one can figure out who done them. Grant concludes, and we all laugh. I went to a continuing education seminar on fraud a while back, I say. The instructor referred to it as the fraud triangle to explain the factors that cause someone to commit a fraud. The theory is that there must be pressure, opportunity, and the ability to rationalize the act. This guy took it one step further. He thought that everyone had the potential to commit a fraud. The tipping point is unique to each person. It's in every one of us, though. Beth takes exception to this. I would never steal. Not even if you were starving to death or your child was starving, you wouldn't steal a piece of bread? Didn't you see Les Miserables? Well, maybe, but that's different. It isn't different, though. It's just a matter of degrees. Beth and Grant have so much money, they would never feel the pressure to steal because they could always buy what they needed. The same triangle applies to unethical behavior other than stealing, such as cheating on your wife, I say. Pressure, you really need to get laid. Opportunity, a beautiful babe is interested in you, a pot-bellied rich old fart. Rationalization, your wife is sick, bored, disgusted by you, or all of the above. I do not have a pot belly, Grant said, grinning. I was talking about Winston, I say. They get quiet. Have you talked to Winston lately? Beth asked. When I say no, Beth and Grant exchange looks. Caroline is pregnant. Did you know? Beth finally says. I down the rest of my martini and signal the waiter to bring me another. Oh my, I muster. Is that a good thing? Grant and Beth decide not to answer my question, and we are saved by the waiter bringing our entrees to the table. Suddenly, I wish I'd ordered the lasagna instead of having what Beth ordered, the broiled fish with steamed spinach, all taste on the side. Impulsively, I take a piece of garlic bread from the basket and consume it in a single bite, issuing Beth a don't judge me look as I reach for another. How would you steal the painting? Grant asks to break the silence. What? You said you would probably do the same thing. How would you go about it? Grant is a sweetheart for trying to take my mind off Winston. I don't know, probably take a picture of the real one, have a forgery made, and then switch them over the weekend or after hours. It's a huge painting. You don't think security would see you? Let me tell you a thing about building security. I begin the tale of Easter Sunday, assuring them that you could probably convince the security guard to hang the fake painting for you and load the priceless one into your car, all without the slightest inquiry as to what you were doing. It always amazes me that businesses tend to leave something so critical under the control of minimum wage rent-a-cops. We finish our dinner, refining criminal strategies, and I'm grateful for the temporary diversion. So that's it. That's what I'm going to read to you. This very often, so you're my beta group here. So. Yeah, well, it's nice it's a friendly crowd. So.
All right, awesome. That was great.
Thank you.
Does anybody do you want to ask any questions or anything like that about?
Well, yeah, Joanne. So.
Is this a plant?
See, this is the family.
It's the bride side here.
So talk a little bit about Maisie's family.
Maisie? Oh, Tansy.
Tansy's family.
Okay, well, here's the thing about writing when you're not really a writer is you have to kind of grab what you know. And Tansy grew up in San Francisco just like I did, only I got to embellish her family a little bit. I have 5 older sisters, one of which is sitting right here. I gave Tansy 6 older sisters because when you write about sisters, you have to be really careful. They're so sensitive, right? So I had to include an extra one. So if I wrote something that wasn't great, I could always say, well, no, I wasn't talking about you. It was the fictional sister. And in fact, I included my sister, Sally. In the book, she's called Lucy, and she's an environmental terrorist. And that's pretty close to what my real sister, Sally, is. But what I did was I made her a gorgeous redhead. And so she just loved that character, and I could write anything I wanted to about how fanatical she is about all her environmental causes. She's a big supporter. So that was my trick.
That's awesome.
Do you have another book coming out?
Yeah, I do, actually. Not coming out. It's still in the... I write on airplanes. I travel quite a bit. So if I'm sitting in that middle seat and my upgrade didn't come through, I can pound out a chapter or two. So The character is, she's a lot of fun. She knows how to break into things and not get caught. She can make other people do what's right without them even knowing it. So she's fun. You can put her in a bunch of different ethical situations, and she's not a goody-good. She's got a little Breaking Bad in her, though. A little greed, a little vanity, but it's a fun story nonetheless.
Is that a series with the same character? Because I noticed on the cover it says this is a Tansy mystery or a Tansy novel.
Yeah, you know,
I was wondering if there were going to be more with this same character.
Well, now see, that was a Greenleaf thing. They said the ending leaves itself to more stories because she's sort of just beginning the next adventure. And at the time, not knowing what I was getting into, I thought that sounded like a really good idea, but it's a lot to write. But I'm having fun doing it. So yeah, I think I'll put out, some novellas perhaps, some short stories, but keep the character going because she's a lot of fun. And it is sort of, it's a really fun diversion to just think in your head, what could that person do? What would that person do? So.
All right, Joanne, thanks.
Thank you.